G'day, ZiggyD here, back to continue my PvP Demon Hunter 1v1 dueling theory crafting a little bit. Sorry about stopping the video sort of midway there. I'm still not in my own house, so I sort of have to record in bursts, just basically whenever I can get some recording done. So, in the last video we talked about a lot of the main skills and some of the utility skills. I was going to continue on with the utility skills, however first I wanted to go back and cover two other sort of attacking aggressive skills that I've sort of remembered, and one that someone has brought up in some of the comments of my last video, and I think they are ones that are going to be quite good in PvP as opposed to Hungering Arrow and Impale, another option per se. So, the first one I want to take a look at is sort of a halfway between a defensive ability and halfway between an aggressive ability, and it's Evasive Fire, specifically with the Covering Fire rune, which gives you the spread of 3 shots. Evasive Fire without the Covering Fire rune is very difficult to use. It's a straight line attack and you have to directly hit the opponent. It is an instant attack, so it's not a projectile, which means it can't be dodged if you can get a good shot on them, but it's very hard to get them with that. You have to get a good target and things like that. Whereas Covering Fire, although it sounds like it shoots 3 projectiles, basically any 3 enemies within the firing arc of Covering Fire, which I'll show here, any enemies within that within that arc there will be hit, even if they're in between the 2 projectiles there. So it doesn't have to be a direct hit, and this makes it a lot easier to hit a single opponent running around very quickly. It's also a very fast ability to use. You can retreat with it, and then if you're fighting against a melee character, of course you're going to be proccing the backflip away, 15-yard backflip, which puts a lot of distance between you and an enemy, and this is going to be both a great offensive skill and a great defensive skill in PvP. It'll be interesting to see how good it is compared to Devouring Arrow, maybe as in a sort of a slightly different build. With this as the main evasive technique, you can instead switch out some of these utility skills for other DPS skills like Rain of Vengeance and things like that. So I'm going to be pretty interested to see how Evasive Fire plays out. So the other skill I wanted to mention that has a lot of potential is Elemental Arrow with the Lightning Bolts rune. Now what the Lightning Bolts rune does is it has a 100% chance for a 1.5 second stun on a critical hit. Now this is going to be good depending on your gear. It's going to be very gear dependent based on your critical hit chance. If you have a critical hit chance of 50 plus, maybe in the 60 range, which is quite possible on a reasonable budget now, then Lightning Bolts could also be quite a good ability to use. It's a straight line attack like that, and it is dodgeable. It's a bit slower than some of the other attacks like Evasive Fire and things like that. So it is possible to dodge, but if you can get close enough and sort of open up with one of those, then you can get a really good stun off on that if you happen to get the crit. And it's also not too bad on the damage there with 155% weapon damage, and if you're getting a lot of crits, then you're going to be getting your extra crit bonus damage as well. So I think that one has a lot of potential as a sort of a stun locking ability, combined maybe with some other stuns and things like that. I think CC and stuns for the Demon Hunter especially going to be really powerful. I was talking with a wizard recently who was talking about the CM style of gameplay and whether it would be effective, and I just think with things like Smokescreen, which are a really good CC break, wizard style CCs aren't going to be so useful like that, but I think the Demon Hunter's style of single target stuns and things like that are going to be, I think, going to be really powerful. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. But again, it's going to depend on how they scale different stats. We don't know everything about PvP yet. They might end up scaling things like CC reduction and things like that, and CC reduction gear might become quite popular as well. So that's pretty much it for aggressive abilities. The last utility skill I wanted to cover was the Companion, and there's a couple runes with the Companion that could be useful, and I'll sort of talk about the difference between them and what they, how they could be used in PvP potentially. Now the Boar Companion can absorb some hits. It's not going to be anything like in PvE where the enemy is going to be drawn to attack them. I don't really see many people attacking the Boar intentionally, but there is a chance that it can absorb some hits, sort of tank, especially if it's running to your opponent to attack them and then maybe absorbing some of their hits, especially if they don't have piercing shots and things like that. Also, it gives you a nice boost in life regen, which I think is going to be very important in PvP with the what I assume is going to be the scaled damage system in PvP, and also with the extra 15% resistance. This is just going to help out with tanking. I think survivability is going to be a big deal in 1v1 situations, so I think the Boar Companion has some potential there. Now the other one that I think will be quite popular will be the Spider Companion. It gives a 60% slow, which is quite a big slow for 2 seconds whenever whenever it attacks an enemy. And the really good thing about the Spider Companion is it's not a targetable opponent. The Spider Companion can't be killed, it sort of just scuttles around, does attacks every now and then. It's a small amount of damage, but that slow is going to be really strong. So the opponent really can't do anything about that slow other than having their own sort of CC reduction or trying to avoid the Spider. So I think that one has a lot of potential, and I'll be interested to see how that one plays out. The Bat Companion could be useful, as always, if you need a lot of hatred regen. Pretty much the same as in PvE, the damage it outputs is going to be nice, but not really a big deal for PvP. So now just finishing up my look at PvP skills, I'm going to talk about the passive skills and the ones that I think will be popular in PvP and why I think they'll be effective. Now the first one's going to be Tactical Advantage. Tactical Advantage will be one that I'm pretty sure most Demon Hunters will be running. Put simply, movement speed is a huge deal in PvP situations. And remember that an increase in movement speed is directly going to correlate with a decrease in damage taken from AoE effects. And it's also going to allow you to dodge things, get away from melee characters, get away from stuns with things like Smokescreen a lot easier. And the fact that it's combined with those mobility skills like Volt and Smokescreen means that you just have a massive mobility increase. It's going to make Demon Hunters extremely mobile and I think extremely powerful in PvP. So I'm interested to see how that plays out, but I think Tactical Advantage is going to be a solid passive choice at all times. Now archery is sort of just pretty standard, it's a solid increase in damage, but the hand crossbow increase especially is going to help with things like the elemental arrow, lightning bolts proc, which I mentioned earlier, allowing you to get more of those stuns off, taking you up to that 60% crit chance or even 70% crit chance if you have really good gear. But let's look at what we can sub archery out for if we don't want that increase in damage or crit chance. I think Thrill of the Hunt actually has a lot of potential in PvP. It's sort of not so great in PvE situations. I've done a lot of testing with it with things like strafe snapshotting and things like that, but it's pretty much just been sort of lackluster. And immobilize on a single target in PvE is really not that helpful in the grand scheme of things in farming and things like that. But in PvP, a 2-second immobilize is a huge deal. It allows you to get like 4 or 5 shots off, which can pretty much spell death for your opponent. Now I think this is going to be popular with sort of easy to fire off and easy to hit with, especially abilities like maybe like lightning arrow, lightning bolts, elemental arrow is going to be quite difficult to hit with exactly, so you don't really know if that Thrill of the Hunt is going to hit, and you kind of want to be guaranteed that it's going to hit. So I think Thrill of the Hunt might be popular combined with abilities that are easy to hit, like with multi-shot or things like that. So I'm interested to see how that plays out, but I think 2-second immobilize is going to be really powerful, and I think that's going to one that's sort of just going to need a lot of testing. Now, as another just pure sort of damage increase, Steady Aim is going to be pretty popular. 10 yards is pretty easy to maintain in a 1v1 sort of situation. In PvE, Steady Aim is a little bit harder to maintain because there's a lot of mobs on all sides of you and things like that, and it can be very difficult to keep that 10 yards distance. But in PvP, you're pretty much going to be always wanting to be 10 yards away from your opponent, unless you're playing some sort of niche melee Demon Hunter build. But most Demon Hunters that want a solid 20% increase in DPS in PvP will be able to run Steady Aim, especially if they're using things like Evasive Fire, which gives them a 15-yard distance between them and the enemy. They're going to be able to keep Steady Aim up most of the time, so I think that'll be a solid just DPS increasing passive. Now the final passive I just want to talk about for PvP is Perfectionist. Perfectionist is a fantastic passive. It gives you a huge increase in survivability by a 10% increase in life, armor, and resistances, and it also decreases the discipline cost of your skills by another 10%, so that's also an increase in survivability, and also an increase in mobility and utility, and it just gives you a lot more sustain in the fight. It's going to give you maybe an extra use of an ability in each PvP round, which that sort of thing is the thing that makes a big difference when it comes to sort of the fast and frantic PvP combat. So I think Perfectionist will be a solid survivability choice, especially when combined with other options like the Boar and things like that, which also increase your survivability. It'd be interesting to see how Demon Hunters are able to use these to sort of build tanky in PvP while still taking advantage of some of their higher damage dealing skills. So that's it for my look at skills for PvP. However, there's one more thing I want to take a look at for Demon Hunters, and that's going to be gearing in PvP. And I'm not going to talk about every single piece of gear and the stats and everything that are going to be really important, but I'm sort of just going to take a look at a few specific things that I think will be different in PvP compared to PvE, and I'll do that in the next video, so stick around and subscribe to my channel if you're not already to catch that video. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.